And how we doing, everybody? Hello. Welcome to another episode of Monster Territory, brought to you by the Foul Territory Network. Oh, man, we're getting pretty close to opening day. So what? We got a little over a week to go here until the Sox get to Texas. I'm getting pretty excited. This is the time of spring training where I start to really get dialed in, right? You kind of have to get through those first couple of weeks of spring training, right? You have the excitement of everyone going to camp, right? Seeing everyone, reporting in the best shape of their life and whatnot, seeing all the new faces and everything. But then you kind of get settled into spring training, and it takes a little bit to get through that. But right now, this is where you start to see the roster shaping up. This is always one of my favorite times of the year because, this is when you see these battles get decided, for what positions out there. And obviously for the Red Sox, we got a few that we've been paying attention to this spring. Second base, what's going on there? Is third base even a battle at this point? What's going on with the back end of the bullpen? We're going to talk about that here in this episode. It's starting to get exciting here, and we got some big news here for this episode. So before I do get started, if you can, hit that like button for me. If you are with me on YouTube, think about subscribing down below. We're trying to get to 4K by opening day. I don't know if we're going to be able to get there, but let's see if we can. You definitely want to subscribe because this is going to be a fun season coming up. We're going to be doing post-game shows after every single game this year. Unless I'm just dreadfully sick, that's the only way I won't do a post-game show. But you can count on me to be here live on YouTube reacting to every single game for this coming season. And hey, if you want to follow along in podcast format, that works too. Give us a 5-star review if you are listening to us via Spotify, Apple, wherever you find your favorite podcast. But everyone, before I do dive into everything, I just want to go over tonight's sponsor, and that is Arena Club. I'm going to let the guys over at Foul Territory take over for that.
FT fam, if you love ripping packs of cards, there is a modern way to do that now on Arena Club with their slab packs and crats. I know you love ripping slab packs and getting that sweet card that you've always been looking for.
Yeah, and you don't have to go through all the other ones, all the Kratz cards that are in there. Bang, you just get the big one, the one that you're just peeking right around the corner when you open that pack, the one you expect to get.
Also, Arena Club will make you an instant offer for your card based on its market value. You'll get an instant offer of 90% of the estimated value, so you can accept it on the spot, simple, fast, and risk-free. Use that cash to buy more slab packs, and you can get your cards officially graded by Arena Club. So go check it out right now, FT fam. You can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and then use the code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/FOUL, code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase. Get after it, FT fam.
All righty. Thank you to the guys over at Foul Territory. Please take advantage of that deal. Very good deal going right now with Arena Club. You can find the link down below in the description on YouTube here. Frank Ryan, I see you in the chat saying, get ready for the Chapman roller coaster ride. Can't wait. I'll dive into that in just a little bit. That is something that I have talked about before. So I definitely have some thoughts on that as well. I see you, Jill, in the chat. Chapman, no, please. I know everyone's going to have differing opinions on that one. I'll give you mine a little bit later. But let's dive into this here. Let's dive in. And we're gonna start off with second base. This is what everyone's been paying attention to this spring. What's going to happen with Alex Bregman? Is he going to be playing third base? And remember, after we signed Bregman, even before we signed Alex Bregman, people were thinking, oh, he's going to be the second baseman. Rafael Devers will be the third baseman. I'm going to take you back in time. Go back to the beginning of the offseason when this channel was named Fenway Faithful before we partnered up with Foul Territory and became Monster Territory. I made a prediction saying Rafael Devers was going to move off third base. I said that going into the offseason. Now, I was thinking, it could have either been DH or first base, whatever, happened with Tristan Casas. He was in the rumor mill at the time. I do honestly believe, the Red Sox were trying to move Casas and they were trying to, maybe make an opening at first base for Rafi. But obviously that didn't come to fruition. So to me, it's looking like Rafi's going to be the DH, especially now with the news that we're getting on Kristian Campbell at second base. And, another thing, too, Bregman has not played any second base at all. I did talk about this a little while ago, saying, Bregman, he's one of those guys I feel like you can just play at second base, even if he hasn't played it in a long time. You can just put him there and he'll end up being fine. But the closer and closer we get here to opening day, and he hasn't played one game there, I'm starting to think that's probably not going to happen at this point. And we got a report today from Sean McAdam of Mass Live talking here about Kristian Campbell. And he says here right in the article, I have it for you here on YouTube. And he goes on to say here, entering Tuesday, Campbell had hit just 167 with a 508 OPS. However, the Red Sox won't make their decision based on a few exhibition games. He did mention that Kristian Campbell has been hitting better as of late. They remain intrigued with Campbell's talent and potential, making him a strong candidate to break camp with the team. He also mentions David Hamilton along with Vaughn Grissom. Now, when it comes to Kristian Campbell here, yes, he did get off to a slow start this spring. There's no doubt about that. But he has been hitting a lot better as of late. He's gotten on base in 6 of his last 8 games. He's looked a little more comfortable at the plate. And you can kind of just tell the way he's been going about his at-bats. He's been working some counts more. He's been drawing some walks, had the home run in the breakout game. Sure, that was the breakout game, right, where it's the top minor leaguers. So, that wasn't against a top major league arm in the game, but still, the authority that he put into that swing, just an oppo home run. You love to see stuff like that. That was a great swing from Kristian Campbell in that game. That's the kind of stuff you like to see, even though it was, a spring breakout game. That doesn't count towards his overall stats, but either way, Campbell has looked a lot better at the plate as of late, despite the overall slash line not looking all that great. I know there's going to be some accounts out there on, Twitter land when it comes to the Red Sox where, they'll be like, oh, he's only hitting 158 this spring, where it's like, yeah, but that doesn't really paint the whole picture. When it comes to stats in spring training, because it's such a small sample size, you really need to dig a little deeper into the numbers. You got to look at especially towards the end of spring training. A lot of the times it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And, it's not just what the slash line looks like. It's how you're working the counts. It's how your swings are looking, the quality of contact. So if you see people out there, putting the slash line for Kristian Campbell, that doesn't really paint the whole picture. It's a matter of, how is he looking and what are the projections looking like for him heading into this season. So the Red Sox, they seem to feel, especially after reading these words from Sean McAdam, there seems to be a bit more comfort with Kristian Campbell over guys like Vaughn Grissom, who's also been hitting a little bit better as of late, but I think Campbell's been a smidge better than Grissom lately. There is also David Hamilton. He is definitely more of a second baseman over a shortstop, where he wasn't very good there last year. He's looked okay this spring training. He's getting on base at a decent clip, a couple of home runs. He's stealing some bases. I like David Hamilton, though, more in a bench spot, more of a utility kind of a guy that can move around in the infield, maybe even play some outfield. That has been talked about with David Hamilton for this coming season. I like Hamilton in that kind of a role, but the reason I like the idea of Kristian Campbell at second base, not just because, he's one of our top prospects and he was amazing last year and you love the potential, but I love the idea of Kristian Campbell at second base simply because I kind of want to get him that exposure at the major league level. I feel like he showed everything he could last year in that rise through the minor league system last year. I mean, the guy was just unbelievable, putting up great numbers everywhere he played. Sure, could he start at AAA, for the at the beginning of the year, get some at-bats there and come up a little bit later? Sure. But I'm thinking right now, if it's a toss-up at second base where, Vaughn Grissom hasn't exactly, taken the position by the horns, then I feel like if it's a toss-up, why not go with Kristian Campbell, who, again, looked great last year. He is starting to look a little bit better as of late. And you kind of get him that exposure, like I just said. Think about Dustin Pedroia back in 2007, right? Yes, he came up a little bit in 2006. Remember, towards the end of that season, the Red Sox weren't really playing for all that much, but so that was a little different. Campbell hasn't had that type of an experience yet, but if there is ever a time where you could put him, or put someone at the major league level to start the year, I feel like this is one of those times because, again, it is a toss-up. It'd be a lot different if Grissom was hitting a lot better, or you had, a more, what's the word I'm looking for? An option that you can count on moving forward, even if the ceiling isn't as high. That, again, Campbell, I just feel like this is the time to do it if there's ever a time, and let's see, even if he goes through his bumps, even if he has his challenges at the beginning of the year, have him work through those, have him get to experience those tough times, getting used to major league pitching. I feel, especially the maturity that he has, the way he carries himself, even if he gets off to a tough start, I feel like that's going to be good for him either way. And even if he ends up going back down to the minor leagues at some point, I feel like it's going to be a good thing for him to, I keep using the word exposure, but for him to get that experience at the major league level. Because if anything, if he's really struggling, you could send him back down. I don't think that's going to wreck him. I don't think that's going to ruin him. I think he'll end up being fine. But I'm all for getting Campbell that experience right off the bat. And, we'll see what ends up happening there. But I'm starting to get a good feeling about Campbell being the guy now. And then Bregman is going to be the the third baseman moving forward. And, hey, could you imagine if Kristian Campbell, starts the year at second base and he just gets a feel for everything right off the bat? No, I'm not asking for, the numbers that he was putting up in the minor leagues, but even if he ends up holding his own and doing pretty well and playing decent defense at second base, I mean, this Red Sox team is just light years better than what it was last year when you have Bregman at third. I mean, that infield would be so much better than what it was last year. That better defense at third base. Campbell, again, this is if he gets off to a good start and he ends up producing for you. I mean, that infield is just so much better than what it was last year. Remember, second base was a bit of a black hole last year. It's been a black hole for a little while now. It feels like, they've been trying to find the answer for a long time now. And it looks like they have their answer now. So, again, I'm okay with going with Campbell at second base to start the year. I can see a lot of people out there thinking, oh, no, you don't want to rush the guy. I don't look at it as rushing. I look at it as it's a good opportunity. The timing feels right. And I say just go with it. And if it ends up, not working out, from the get-go, and, you got to make an adjustment later on, then you can do that. You have other options that you can turn to. And I think for Vaughn Grissom, let's say that ends up happening, I think it doesn't hurt for him, to go get some consistent at-bats at the minor league level. This is a guy where, he had a very up and down season last year. I think it would be a good thing for Grissom to start the year at AAA and get that consistency going again. And if he gets called upon at some point, if they need to make that switch, then, at least he's gotten himself into a rhythm and he's getting consistent at-bats. And let's say this. Let's say Kristian Campbell, he starts the year as the second baseman, and he ends up doing great, and he has solidified himself as the everyday second baseman for the Red Sox. And if Grissom's hitting well at the minor league level, then at some point, maybe there could be a deal made where, maybe the Red Sox could send him somewhere else and get back something else that they need for the team. So I could see a situation like that as well. Or, who knows, maybe Grissom gets some time out in the outfield or whatever it may be. Either way, I think it's a positive to have Grissom at the AAA level to start the year. I know a lot of people are going to, look back to the Chris Sale trade and be like, really? We got basically just a depth guy for Chris Sale who won a Cy Young last year. I don't look at it that way. For me, the Chris Sale trade, that was really just to clear salary off the books. And, if you got anything out of Grissom, then great. But I wasn't counting on Grissom to be, our future second baseman. But either way, I think that works out. And then one more time with David Hamilton, I see him as more of like that guy who comes off the bench. He's that spark plug kind of a guy who can play some other positions. So I'm excited with how this infield is starting to shape up. Now, getting to the DH spot. We got Masataka Yoshida here. Masataka Yoshida, hey, he has been hitting pretty well in this spring. Let's go pull up his numbers. He has not played in the outfield as of yet, but hey, Yoshida, he's been getting himself some hits. He's got 9 hits over 28 ABs this spring. He did have a homer today. Hey, he has looked pretty good with the bat, but the problem with Yoshida at this point is, there's a couple of problems here. When it comes to Yoshida, you need him to have some kind of versatility. You need to have some kind of flexibility with him. If he's just a DH, then you already have Rafi as your DH. Yoshida, he's not a good fit for the team. Really, the only way where he's at least a decent fit on the team is if he can play some outfield as well, where, as of right now, Willie Abreu, let's see how he ends up looking towards the end of spring, but he is back to playing now. You got Duran out in left, you got Rafaela out in center, and you got Willie Abreu out in right. So, really with Yoshida, the only way I could see him getting playing time at this point is if, when you really want to, load up on the lefties in the lineup, and then you get Yoshida out in left field, and then Duran can go play center. And then Rafaela, you just kind of figure out what to do with him at that point. Rafaela, it feels, the only way I could see Rafaela getting consistent playing time, whether or not it's with Yoshida on the roster or if he's not on the roster, it's getting either utility reps, moving to different positions, or if he's going to be the everyday center fielder, you got to figure out what to do with Yoshida at this point. He's, to me, the way I kind of think with the Red Sox, I think they want Rafaela in this lineup every day. I think they want the defense out in center field. I think they want that, bit of a power speed threat at the bottom of the lineup. I think they just want Rafaela and his great defense in center field, which is very important. I think they would rather have that over Yoshida at this point. So the news coming out of camp today is that it's Cora. He was talking today saying that it's looking like he could start the year on the IL. And here are the quotes. Alex Cora, when asked about that, whether or not he will open the season on the injured list, he said, "We haven't decided that, but most likely." Really, at this point with Yoshida, it's like, I want the guy to succeed, but I just don't know if that's going to be with Boston. I'm honestly, you really have to wait and see kind of how the roster shapes up. I know we want answers right now. I know, we want to, build the roster at this moment. But I think you need to let things play out a little bit over the first month of the year. At least over the first couple of weeks, who knows? Maybe someone goes down and then that's a situation where it works itself out. But I just think with Yoshida at the end of the day, I'm having a hard time. If everyone stays healthy and everyone's good and producing, I don't know, man. I'm having a hard time seeing Yoshida staying on this roster for the long haul. I think there could be a situation where they put him on the IL at first, buys him a little time, because obviously he is not throwing yet. So they do have that excuse to put him on the IL. I was seeing people out there today on social media saying, "Oh, well, they can't do that. You can't just stash him on the IL." Well, in this case, you can because he had shoulder surgery and he hasn't been throwing yet. So, or he's still building up his throwing. So you have that excuse to buy you a little time. Now, when he is coming off the IL, that's going to be really interesting. I think, again, they're buying themselves time as much as possible. I think when that time comes, it's going to get super interesting. I could see him being on the roster for a little while, in case someone goes down. But I really honestly think there could be a situation where he ends up getting DFA'd if there's not another team out there where maybe they have an injury and they need to get another bat into their lineup. I don't know. I have a hard time unless things work themselves out. Someone gets hurt and he needs to step in. I have a hard time seeing Yoshida on this roster going into June. I'm really starting to get that feeling, and that's not anything against, his ability. I think he can be a very productive hitter. I just don't know with this roster construction. I just don't know if that's going to be here. We'll see how this goes, but this has been the rumored plan for a little bit for him to start the year on the IL. We'll see how this ends up going here. Now, when it comes to the bullpen, let's go to the bullpen, shall we? We got some interesting news here today. Some interesting news. This has been something where people have been speculating about the back end of the bullpen, right? You were kind of wondering, were the Red Sox going to maybe add something else to the back end of the bullpen at one point? David Robertson was a name that people were throwing out there, but in the end, they invited Ottavino to camp, but the three guys that you were looking at to possibly take the closer role at the beginning of the year, Liam Hendriks, Justin Slayton, and Aroldis Chapman. Now, when they signed Aroldis Chapman, in my eyes, I was looking at him as that big lefty at the back end of the bullpen, right? That you can bring into those high leverage situations. You can bring him in against lefties. The Red Sox, they didn't do very well in that department last year. This was a guy where he could take over that kind of a role. You needed that high leverage lefty. Now, when it came to Chapman being a closer, that just made my stomach churn a little bit, because Chapman over the years has had a lot of moments where he has folded in big spots. Now, I will bring this up. When you go back to the Rangers a couple of years ago when they won their World Series, he was actually pretty good in that postseason. He came up in a couple of big spots for the Rangers in some big games there. So with Chapman, because he's had a lot of those moments, it kind of freaks you out thinking about him as the closer, right? You go back to when he was with the Yankees, gave up, big time home runs, one to Jose Altuve. You had the other one to Mike Brasso with the Rays. So yeah, there's been a lot of times where he has absolutely choked on the mound in big spots. However, when you look at the numbers of Liam Hendriks this spring, Liam Hendriks, it's been amazing what he's been able to overcome in his life, beating cancer. That was an amazing thing. But I was saying this a lot. There is a lot of rust with Liam Hendriks. The last time he pitched was 2023. It's not easy for a guy to, miss an entire year like that, especially with what he was coming back from. You know what I mean? Like, he came back from that, he pitched, and then he ended up getting he came back from the cancer, and then he pitched, and then he had to get Tommy John. So he's gone through a lot. So it's no surprise to see that he's still trying to find his way this spring. The velo has been a little down. The stuff hasn't looked a little crisp. And, like I said, spring training numbers don't really matter all that much. But, when you look at the stuff, when you look at the lack of command that he's had this spring, along with the poor numbers, and you compare that to Aroldis Chapman, who's been piling up the strikeouts this spring, 10 strikeouts over 5 1/3 innings, an ERA at a 3.38. The FIP is a little lower in the 2s. Chapman right now looks like the guy that you should probably go with at least at the beginning of the year. Now, I've been seeing people also talking about Justin Slayton. Here's the thing about Justin Slayton. I think there is a chance that he could be the closer at some point. This guy was great last year. He put up great numbers at 2.93 on the ERA, good amount of strikeouts last year. The FIP looked pretty good as well. Good advanced metrics. Slayton is a guy that I think, the Red Sox, they scored big with him. They basically got him for free. And, they've really found something with him. I think there is a chance that he could be the guy at some point. But I'm okay. So maybe some people are going to completely disagree with this. And, this could be a hot take. But right now, I am okay with going with Chapman over Justin Slayton. And the reason is I would rather go with the experience to start off the year and kind of ride that as long as you can go. If Chapman starts slipping up at some point during the year, then maybe you could turn to Justin Slayton. And then maybe if that doesn't work out, you've had many guys that have stepped into the closer role and it ends up not working out, right? They could be pitching great in other spots, in other innings out of the bullpen, and then you put them in the ninth, and then all of a sudden things just aren't working out, right? So I think there is a chance where Slayton could be that guy at some point. But again, I would rather have that experience to start off the year. Go with someone that has produced in that role. Yes, I know he's had his struggles, in those big moments like I mentioned, but I'd be okay with going with Chapman to start off the year and see how it goes. If it ends up not working out, maybe you could turn to Slayton. Or if Hendricks is looking better, go back to him. Give him another chance. Whatever it may be. You can still make that adjustment at some point. I'd rather go with the experience to start off the year than, going with a guy that hasn't proven himself in that role. And hey, for Slayton, right, let him get back into that rhythm. And once he's pitching great again, and he's got himself good, then maybe you can look at that later. And let's say if this all doesn't work out, one thing I'm going to say, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say this right now. When it comes to the trade deadline, I expect the Red Sox to be involved at the trade deadline. Listen, depending on how all this works out, this is to be determined. I think the Red Sox could very well be in the market for a guy to be a closer down the stretch. Again, a lot, it has to happen here. You're going to have to go through a few guys, I think, for the Red Sox to get to that point. But let's say Chapman's going through some things. Hendricks, you're still not fully confident in him being that closer moving forward. Let's say Slayton gets a shot at some point. It's not really working out, whatever. Who knows? I could see the Red Sox maybe giving the Cardinals a call and maybe, going after someone like Ryan Helsley, right? They were talking with the Cardinals over Nolan Arenado, and obviously that didn't happen. But, maybe there could be a deal made for Helsley at some point if he stays healthy or someone else out there. You never know what could end up happening. I think the Red Sox could be a dark horse candidate to go after someone at the trade deadline. But, again, I'm okay with starting with Chapman. I think that's fine. And then depending on how that goes, maybe you can go to Hendricks, Slayton. It's a long season, everybody. Whoever you go with now, it could be way different by the time you get to September. So, you saw that with Koji Uehara back in 2013, right? You went through how many guys, like Joel Hanrahan, Andrew Bailey, right? Whoever else, I can't even remember at this point. But, to get to the amazing Koji Uehara, you had to go through a couple of guys. So, I'm okay with, figuring it out for now, but hopefully they have this figured out by the end of the year. And one more thing I want to touch on here. Is Brian Bayo. Things are looking positive. This happens with Bayo, I feel like every spring the last couple of years now, where he gets to spring and it kind of takes him a little bit, right? He either ends up getting some shoulder fatigue, something going on with the arm a little bit where he's got to kind of work his way back up. But it's looking like that is happening yet again. He said here today, after experiencing shoulder soreness at the beginning of camp, he threw live batting practice and said, by next week, I should be up to 4 or 5 innings. There's a plan in place, so hopefully by the first or second week of April, I'll be back in. So luckily for the Red Sox, they have really built up this depth in the in the rotation. Richard Fitz, this guy is having himself a great spring. The velo is looking very good with him. It's looking like he is going to have himself a turn in the rotation. I would say for at least the first couple of weeks. Giolito, he's going to be starting the year on the IL. Obviously, Cutter Crawford, he's going to be out for a little while. But Richard Fitz has looked amazing this spring. He has completely taken advantage. He's pitched 4 games overall, 10 2/3 innings, an ERA at 0.84, FIP at a 2.48. He's getting a lot more swing and misses. The fastball velocity is up. He had himself a good offseason. He's got that figured out. Right around 11 strikeouts per 9. The strikeout to walk ratio is looking very good. So you got someone like Richard Fitz right now who can slide into the back of the rotation. Quinn Priester, let's see what ends up happening with him. He's looked okay this spring so far, taking a look at his numbers overall. He's also pitched in 4 games. He's actually started all 4 games while Fitz has started 2 of them. Priester, he's looked a little up and down. I feel like he's shown some good things. The command has not looked great with him overall, so the numbers don't look great when you take a look at him. But I think there has been some good things. So I'm curious to see how this fifth spot in the rotation goes. I wouldn't be surprised if you ended up seeing someone like Cooper Criswell get that fifth spot in the rotation. Let me pull him up here. And when it comes to Mr. Cooper Criswell, the $1 million man, hey, this guy stepped into the rotation last year. And I think the Red Sox could very well give him that fifth spot. There was a few starts that he had last year where he looked pretty good. So I could see a situation where they go with Cooper Criswell. They start Quinn Priester at AAA just to kind of, so he's not bouncing back and forth. I feel like you could do that to kind of help him start off the year, building some consistency. Sure, maybe they could put him, at the major league level and, get him a starter or two. But, why not go start the year at AAA? Because if you're going to be going back down there anyway, why not just start the year there and, kind of just get your footing right? Just, build that routine up. And then maybe in a few months, he can get the call at some point. I think Cooper Criswell, could end up being the guy that ends up getting that fifth spot in the rotation. Fitz is definitely going to get a spot here. But overall, I think the good thing about that is the depth is looking better than it has in a long time, right? Garrett Crochet, Tanner Houck, Walker Buehler, those guys are set for 1 through 3. It's nice to see the Red Sox have these options. I feel like they haven't had these options in a long time. It just goes to show, how good the Red Sox have put this together here over the last couple of years, building that depth in the organization, adding someone like Crochet and Buehler to the rotation this offseason. It's a nice thing to see. But everybody, I'm going to wrap it up right there. Let me see what you're all saying here in the chat before I get out of here. We actually got a super chat here. What do we got here? Ease Kristian Campbell in off on the bench, Hamilton at second base. I don't know, man. I think with Kristian Campbell, I want him to be getting everyday reps. I don't want him to be getting inconsistent at-bats off the bench. To me, you're either starting the year at AAA at second base or you're starting in the majors at second base. And again, I'll get back to that point where I'm okay with him getting that experience at the major league level, right? Get a look at some of these guys, right? Get a look at some of this major league pitching. Get a look at Jacob deGrom on opening day. He is obviously someone the Red Sox feel very highly about, right? They feel like he is the future. Why not get him a look now? Have him go up against Jacob deGrom, Nathan Eovaldi in Texas. Say, hey, this is what it's like at the major league level. Welcome. So you know what I mean? I would like him to get that experience, that exposure. What else we got here in the chat? Seeing a lot of you here in the chat. My goodness, you're having great conversation here. Roscoe, I'm okay with that. No argument. Like you said, Robbie, you can always change and see what Slate can do. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Again, it's a long season. You can always make those changes. But Cora, what we do know is Cora likes having the roles, right? So he's not going to be, wanting to dance around with this. He's going to want to establish this at some point. I think the first month, April, May, I think that could be very interesting for the bullpen. He's going to want to have something set in stone. And if nothing's working out, I could see the Red Sox go make a deal at some point. Edwin, how you doing, my friend? Welcome to the tonight's episode. Appreciate you joining, my friend. What else we got here? Gobbler. Arenado to the Yankees. I don't know what's going on. We're going to be. I'm going to be giving you my predictions here over the next week. The Yankees, they're looking rather interesting. Could they still make a deal? I'm not sure. What else we got? Peter Garcia. Hendricks should get the first crack and let Garrett Whitlock take over. I think that could be another option at one point. I think a lot of people are forgetting about Garrett Whitlock. The way I see Garrett Whitlock, honestly, I think they look at what he did back in 2021. I feel like it's that happy medium for him where he wanted to be a starter. Didn't work out, obviously. Wasn't able to stay healthy. But, he can pitch in those multi-inning roles. Or could you just have him be the closer? I mean, I was thinking he should be the closer going back, heading into 2022. That's what I thought the role should have been. So maybe he could be in this conversation. I think right now it's Chapman, Hendricks, and Slayton, and Whitlock is kind of like that Swiss Army knife in that bullpen. But I could see him coming up at some point. Rob Bradford, baseball isn't boring. He would love to have Garrett Whitlock as the closer. Maybe I'll even throw this. Probably not going to happen, but look out for Michael Fulmer. I'm not saying he's going to be the closer, but I wonder if he could end up playing a pretty big role in this bullpen. Remember, the Red Sox signed him last offseason, and he missed the whole year after getting Tommy John. But I wonder if Michael Fulmer could come back, this year and end up doing some pretty good things. This is a guy that had some success in the bullpen, going back to, 2021, 22. He was okay with the Cubs in 23, got a decent amount of strikeouts. But this spring, he's looked all right. Right around 8.5 strikeouts per 9, ERA under a 1 over 9 1/3 innings pitched. So, hey, Michael Fulmer, look out for him in this bullpen as well. But everyone, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Do greatly appreciate that. It's been, quite a bit now since we've gone live here on YouTube. I have been doing podcast episodes. We haven't gone live in a while, but I'm going to start kicking these lives up a little bit over the next week and a half before we get to opening day. I am going to be doing a couple of post games at some point. That's going to be my spring training, to kind of get ready for some post-game coverage, just to, help me get a feel for it. I haven't done a lot of post-game stuff ever since I've started on YouTube. So that's going to be my spring training. So look out for that over the next week or so. Maybe we'll do that for the Mexico series as we're, pretty close to the regular season. But again, we're going to be doing a lot of post games this year. I'm so excited for that. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure the bell is turned on. And we're going to have a lot of fun this season, everybody. But everyone, I'm out of here. I'm going to wrap this up. Again, if you're here with us live on YouTube, subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button for us. It really helps out. And if you are listening to us with your favorite podcast, whether that's Spotify, Apple, wherever it may be, leave us a 5-star review. It really does help us out. But everyone, thank you so much for joining in this episode, and we'll talk to you next time.